I'm guessing that you guys came to this with the expectation of hearing about depression and anxiety. Well, I've done this talk, done this power track a few times, and I've come to the conclusion I'm going to do something a little differently this year. 2 reasons. One, I feel like you guys get a lot of education about this through media, through school, through your friends. Like, you guys probably know more about depression and anxiety than I did as a kid. I might have spent a paragraph in health class about it. I think you guys probably have a chapter on it in health class. And so I want to go about this in a much different way, because I don't need to rehash and define it for you guys, because you guys already know that. 2, I'm kind of bored doing that, so I wanted to do something a little different. I don't know about you guys, I get bored in life, and it's always good to kind of like do something different. And so we're going to kind of talk more about where it comes from and what we can do about it, because I think that's really what you guys want, is you guys know what it is, and I know like that's a good thing to know what it is, but then what do you do about it? Like, knowing something doesn't really change the world. It's the action that we're going to do about it. So let's kind of go there. So depression and anxiety happen because we feel hopeless and overwhelmed. Because that's kind of the feeling that I've gotten in working with teenagers, is that is a good description of how you guys can sometimes feel. You guys feel hopeless and just overwhelmed. And then I kind of added to that after I got here, and I was listening to Clayton King's talk. I was thinking, and you kind of like lose your identity too, or your identity lies in the negative things of life. And so you're dwelling and thinking about those kind of things. So your identity will often lie in feeling like you're stupid, or you're unlovable, or you're a cutter, or you're ugly, or a failure. Now, here's the interesting part though. I believe that the answer to fighting these feelings of hopelessness and overwhelm are boundaries. So just kind of imagine someone or you constructing a fence around you. So you have this little fence, cute little fence. Every house, most houses have it. And why do people put fences up? They put fences up because they want to keep certain things out and keep other things in. And that's that same idea when it comes with boundaries around you, a fence around you, is you want to keep hopelessness and overwhelming stuff out, and peace and hope inside. But the interesting part is, so I'm telling you guys that like rules and laws and those kind of things are actually good for you. And I've got a feeling some of you guys I don't like rules. I don't like regulations. I don't like people to tell me what to do. I don't like those kind of stuff. Because I want to experience freedom. I want to have my own choices. I want to go do all these things. But what I'm telling you is sometimes if we have too many choices in life, we can feel overwhelmed and hopeless. And so we need boundaries. I need boundaries. I'm not even a teenager, and I need boundaries in my life. Otherwise, life can just get overwhelming and out of control. So I want you to introduce you to somebody. I'm going to introduce you to Jordan. Jordan is your typical teenager. I picked the name because it's a neutral name. It could be a boy or a girl, right? Trust me, it took me a long time to figure that one out. So Jordan, this is Jordan. The interesting thing about Jordan, the way this person is set up, is you clearly know where Jordan begins and where Jordan ends, right? He's a box. I'm going to say he a lot for some reason, but Jordan is a box. If you were paying attention, you're not going to trip over him. You know exactly where Jordan is, correct? Okay. So the things written on the outside of Jordan are things that are going on. Jordan is a typical teenager, has a lot of things going on. So they have got family and friends, relationships, school, youth group stuff, social media things, gaming, and you got to include Pokemon Go, because I've got a feeling like 90% of you guys are playing that. I am glad my kids are young enough. They love Pokemon, but they don't really know about Pokemon Go yet, which is good. So that is Jordan. Now, inside Jordan's box are Jordan's thoughts, beliefs, actions, and emotions. And we'll continue getting back to Jordan. Jordan's going to help us understand and get through this talk. Now, here's how it works. The things that are outside of the box are things that Jordan interacts with, affects, has fun with, doesn't enjoy, that kind of stuff. But the interesting thing is Jordan does not control 100% the things that are going on outside the box. Like, these are things that other people also affect, enjoy, interact with. So therefore, there's no way to control that 100%. Now, inside the box, these are the things that are Jordan's. These are the only thing that Jordan controls 100% of the time. I know this. It doesn't always feel like you control your thoughts, but you do. And I will specify, it's more like you control what you do with those thoughts. So the thoughts pop in your head, and then Jordan has a decision of what to do with that thought. Do I keep it, or do I trash it? Beliefs, actions, and emotions, those are things that Jordan controls. And it seems very clear-cut, right? Very defined. Now, knowing what you control and what you do not control, what belongs inside your box and what belongs outside the box, gives you a sense of like, hey, I can handle this, because now you know what you can and you cannot do. You know when to say yes and when to say no. You will begin to feel more hopeful and less confused. And you have to stick with me, because it might seem a little confusing that boundaries will help you, but we'll go with this. So I got an amazing experience years ago to go deep sea fishing off the coast of Mexico. The cool thing about doing it outside the coast of Mexico is you don't have many regulations. So we did some things you would never have done off the coast of the United States. So we set off early one morning. We got up. It was like the day before we decided to do this. We're like, let's go deep sea fishing. And so we boarded a boat, small fishing boat, and headed out. And it was a beautiful day. The sun was coming up. It was clear. And we got a ways out. We were kind of inside this harbor. And next thing you know, dolphins come up. And they're just everywhere surrounding a boat, just coming up. And it was the most peaceful, the coolest thing ever. And then we got a little ways further out. Sharks appeared. That was a little unnerving, but I was okay with it. It wasn't too bad, and they kind of came and they went, but it was a little unnerving, but it was good. I got through that. I still felt safe in my little boat. Life was good. It was still full of hope. I was still excited about the day. The air was warm. I was feeling good. Today was going to be a good day. I had all the hope. But then an interesting thing happened. The land disappeared. And that changed things. It definitely changed things. All I could see was water. And all of a sudden, that same boat that I experienced back there felt really small, because the ocean felt really big. And then the whales appeared. Holy smokes. I don't know how close you guys have ever been to a whale, but they're huge, huge. And then I really started feeling overwhelmed. So I really tried hard not to think about it so I could make sure that I enjoyed myself, because it got really overwhelming to think about the vastness of the ocean and the very large animals that were probably swimming underneath me at that moment in time. I was completely overwhelmed. And I totally felt like there was nothing now protecting me but this little fishing boat. I felt totally small and helpless in the ocean. But the interesting part is I was in the same boat as I was with the sharks. So what was the difference between being out in the ocean, way out with whales, as opposed to back with the sharks? And the conclusion was the boundary. Back with the sharks, I could still see land. The ocean did not feel so big. It felt much smaller because the land was still behind me. Because the crazy part to think about this is that sharks, I even saw a girl up here, she was like, no way would I want to be around sharks. Because the sharks are actually probably more dangerous to me than the whales were. Because most whales, you have a few whales who are probably not so good for me, but most whales aren't going to hurt me if I end up in the water. The whales are not what I should be afraid of. It should have been the sharks back there. But for some reason, I was more overwhelmed by that than I was about the sharks towards the land. And doesn't life feel that way sometimes? you find yourself in a little boat in a great big ocean called life. We feel overwhelmed and hopeless. But the interesting part is the world really hasn't changed. The people haven't changed. But yet our boundaries have changed. A lot of times we lose that sense of boundary. We lose that sense of security. So if we understand what we control and what we do not control, what is outside our box and what is inside our box, that can help us feel more secure and therefore feeling less overwhelmed and more hope. I remember a point in time of my life when I definitely felt these things. High school was a rough experience. I spent a majority of my time during my sophomore and junior year just managing my stress and anxiety. As I was preparing this talk, I was thinking, I would share my testimony and talk about those kind of things. Then I realized that the story that I would be sharing would not be my story to share. Because the reality was, the stress that I was actually experiencing was not really my stress. It was other people's stress that I was internalizing, that I was putting inside my box, that then I was experiencing. I was feeling very overwhelmed and hopeless. My boat at that moment in time felt very small because I allowed other people's stress to jump into my box. So I was letting things that I do not control, other people's stress, jump into a box where I control. And now all of a sudden, my life was filled with other people, other things, and I couldn't do anything about it. And after my junior year, I ended up going on a mission trip. And that mission trip sent me away from my stress. And that set a very clear boundary now, because now I was not in close proximity to the stressors that were jumping into my box. And it was life-changing for me, because I was then able to have some separation, some time to think about what was going on, what was happening, find out kind of who I am, and then go back. And I even found that when I came back, after I kind of had that time apart, when I came back, the people that were causing me stress were even different. So even that separation, not only was it good for me to reset my boundaries, to know who I was and realize what I control, but it was good for them because now I was no longer in their life to put their stuff into my box. They now had to figure out their life on their own. So separation sometimes is good. Saying no is a good thing. And the thing is, I see this happening in your guys' life all the time. So the reality is life hasn't changed too much since I was in high school as opposed to you. I still felt those same feelings of feeling very overwhelmed and very stressed. We're busy trying to control, this is what I see, we're busy trying to control the outside of our box in hopes it's going to change the inside of our box. And that's not how that works. We need to change this because we don't control this. But the thing is, the world often will tell us that this is how life works. That if you control these things, then these things inside will change. For example, McDonald's. Seriously, I get so mad at McDonald's commercials. Or even sitting inside McDonald's makes me so mad sometimes. Because have you ever seen a person in a McDonald's commercial who is overweight, has pimples, and is depressed? No, you never will, because they want you to believe that if you eat their food, you will be happy, beautiful, and have lots of friends. I remember seeing a commercial about when they first came out with their smoothies, and the commercial was all about this group of friends drinking smoothies on a beachfront, swinging on a swing, just having the time of their life. And I'm like, I don't know that many people who are going to feel that way when they're drinking a smoothie and do that kind of stuff. And most people, when you think about it, who are spending time at the beach are probably not going to be drinking some McDonald's smoothies. I'm just being honest with that. But McDonald's wants you to believe that their food is going to change the inside of your box. So we're busy trying to do stuff here that's going to change the inside. But the reality is it's hard for you guys to get a separation. How do you guys get a break to kind of figure out who you are? Because the world is loud. And why is the world loud? Because the reality is you guys carry the world in your back pockets. I had ways to get away from my stressors and my feelings of overwhelm because I could go someplace and you know what? They couldn't reach me because I didn't carry them in my back pocket. I didn't carry those things in my back pocket. I couldn't work on school in certain times because I didn't have access to the things that I needed. And so I'm seeing this happening a lot in your life. So the reality is the world might feel small to you guys because the internet allows you guys to interact more. But here's what I think is really happening. The world hasn't changed. The world is just as big as it always has. But now you guys are required to manage more. So just like when I was in the ocean, that ocean never changed. That ocean was as big as it was when I was next to the ocean as when I was in the middle of the ocean. Didn't change. But all of a sudden when I was out in the ocean, I now had more ocean to deal with because I didn't have land blocking view of some of the ocean. Hopefully that makes sense. And so we need to set up boundaries in our life. Because you guys, not only do you guys have to juggle school, family, your friends, home life, church, but you guys are also managing thousands of friends on social media. And you guys are managing thousands of people who are making money off of social media, trying to get into your box, trying to be a part of your life, trying to get you to buy into what they're selling. And therefore, when what they're selling is often, they want you to think a certain way, they want you to believe certain things, they want you to do certain things, they want you to act a certain way because that's going to put more money in their pockets and make them more famous. And all of a sudden, they're trying to get you guys to do that. And now you guys have to manage that and live up to those expectations. And the reality is we do this to each other, too. So I want to make sure we touch on this. We do this to each other. And it drives me crazy. And don't say that I don't do it. I do it myself. Because I'm married and I have kids and we interact with one another and I don't always claim what I'm supposed to claim that's inside my box. Sometimes through our emotions, we put our own emotions or views inside other people's boxes. And we expect them to do something so that our stuff changes. So if we're having a bad day, we will go to our friends and expect them to make us feel better. But the reality is your friends can't make you feel better. Only you choose how you're going to think and what you're going to feel and what you're going to do. You choose what thoughts. And so how many times have we gone to our friends or our friends have given us a compliment? Wonderful, great, truth compliment. And what do you do with it? Oh, that's not true. That's we discount it because at that moment in time, that's a good example of how we choose what we're going to think. We choose what we are going to believe. Your friends can only say certain things. Your family can only say certain things. And then at that moment in time, you guys have a choice of what you're willing to keep in your brain and what you want to keep out. So it's hard when we go and expect other people, other things to change the inside of our box because you still have 100% control of it. But then all of a sudden you guys are mad or I'm mad because they're not doing what I want them to do and therefore I'm still unhappy. And that's just not how it works. Okay, so I was going through this. I was reminded of the verse in Ephesians 5:18. Do not get drunk on wine, but be filled with the Holy Spirit. And I don't think the verse necessarily means don't go get drunk. So we're gonna look at the whole context of it, to see exactly what's going on with it. Okay, so Ephesians 5. I'm gonna click over here because it's someplace else on my tablet. But where is it? There it is. Okay, Ephesians 5. And I'm going to kind of skip around. I'm not going to read the whole thing just for time. I want to make sure that we've got time for questions. So I'm going to start in 1, and I'm going to skip around there. So therefore, okay, Ephesians 5:1. Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love, as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. I'm going to skip down to 6. Let no one deceive you with empty words. For because of these things, the wrath of God has come upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partners with them, for at one time you were in darkness, and now you are in the light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, For the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true, and try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. And then I'm skipping down to 15. Look carefully then as you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand that what the will of the Lord is. And do not get drunk on wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Holy Spirit. Okay, so right off the bat, he calls us to be imitators of God. Our thoughts, actions, beliefs, and emotions are to be like God. He is our example. So all these things that are inside, you're kind of probably wondering, well, what do I do with this stuff? Like, how do I know what kind of thoughts, beliefs, actions, emotions, how do I know what to do? God gives us direct boundaries in the Bible, does he not? What this stuff is it should look like. He very much has that kind of stuff laid out. Then he goes on, let no one deceive you with empty words. And that happens on the outside of our box. We get a lot of empty words, a lot of empty promises, telling us that if you drink a smoothie from McDonald's, you're going to go hang out with your friends on the beach and be happy. Probably not going to happen for those of us who live in Ohio and do not have an ocean nearby. It is kind of a funny commercial to see in Ohio because we have no oceans. Anyways, so the world gives us lots of empty promises to be beautiful, loved, accepted, and strong. But remember, in Isaiah says, God's word will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what God desires and achieve the purpose for which it was sent. God's promises will come true. They are not empty. And he promises that he will love you and never leave you. And so do not be deceived by the lies that we hear that you are unlovable and alone, or that the outside of the box is going to change your inside of the box. Goes on to say that look carefully how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of your time because the days of evil. So maybe Pokemon, I'm kidding, Pokemon goes fine. So we need to be careful what we're doing. Again, finish reading this. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Do not get drunk with wine, but be filled with the Spirit. It is God and the Word and His Word that should fill our box and affect our thoughts, beliefs, actions, and emotions. We should be careful how we spend our time. If we spend our time with people who engage in actions that are hard to keep boundaries with, or are people who are just hard to keep boundaries with, maybe we should rethink the amount of time that we spend with them. We're engaging in behaviors and actions that are hard to that are affecting the inside of our box. Maybe we should think about changing the things that we're doing so that we're putting that space between them. So what does that look like? How do you put space between you and the world when you carry the world in your back pocket, right? Well, the reality is, though, you control your social media. It is yours. That account, it is yours. You control who has passwords to your account and who doesn't. I don't know how many times I've had people come to my office and they talk about things that friends have done on their social media platform that are not kind or are not good. And I ask, well, how are they doing that? Oh, they have my password. I'm like, well, then change your password and stop them from doing it. You have control of those things. You have the freedom to unfollow anybody that you want to unfollow. And you give other people that same freedom to unfollow anybody that they want to follow. That app that's out there that it's been on forever, that you have on your phone that will tell you if someone has unfollowed you or unfriended you, get rid of it. Get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. Because who cares who's following you and who's not following you? Does that make sense? And you need to not care that people are going to know that you unfollow them because you are allowed to say no to them because you don't like what they're posting. As a counselor, I have to be really careful with my own heart and my own life because the reality is my job, I sit across people all day long listening to their problems and we problem solve and I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it and I'm good at it. Anyways, But the reality is when I go to my Facebook, I will unfollow people who put their drama on my feed because I can't do it. Because then I will sit there and I look at the drama and I think, I know what's going on because I understand behavior and I sit across them every day and I know exactly what's going on. But the reality is I can't save everybody. They're not my client. They're not paying me. I can't do anything about it. And so I don't need to have that stress coming into my home every day. That stuff stays in my office. I deal with it in my office, and that's where it needs to be when I come home. I am home. I am a mom. I am a wife, and I am a friend at home. I am not a counselor. And so if you're going to put your counseling needs on Facebook, I'm going to unfriend you, and I'm not going to feel guilty about that. Does that make sense? You guys need to be able to do the same thing and give your friends that same permission to do that with you. And then, quite honestly, if they do unfriend you, I want you to really think about why they're unfriending you, because that might be something you need to look into your life of, like, what am I putting out there that people feel like they need to set a boundary with me because I'm doing something that is not good for them. Okay. Have one conversation at a time. When you are with people, please interact with the people that you are with. Do not try to be with people and also try to have 5 different conversations on social media. Have one conversation at a time. Because the reality is you cannot be in several places at once. Even though we like to believe that we can. And it's kind of fun because that kind of keeps things like active. But the reality is, therefore, you are not living in that one moment. So I want you to have one. I might say 2. You might have one text conversation going on and talking to people, but limit it. You guys do not, especially if that person is causing drama, turn it off. Don't respond to it. And the other thing that drives me nuts is stop blowing each other's phones up, especially when you're mad at each other. Do not blow each other's phones up. That is the most overwhelming thing ever, is it not, when someone's blowing up your phone? Give the person who's mad at you space. Or give yourself space when you're mad at that person. Give yourself some space. Think about it. Take a break. Really find out what's going on. And then hopefully you can have a conversation face to face. I read once, and I think it is totally good advice. The only conversation you should have on a text message is details, facts. That is the only conversation you should ever have with anybody over texting. You should never talk about emotions. You should never talk, because that person is not, more than half of our communication about emotions is done via our voice and via our hand motions and our body. It's not necessarily always done unless you are a master level, Dr. Lever English person who is writing books, and they do an amazing job expressing emotion through their writing, correct? You guys are not them. You guys are not them. And so when you're frustrated or you need to talk to somebody about it, please talk to them. Don't do it on text. Stick to details. Hey, let's go do something tonight. Okay, what are we going to do? Do that kind of stuff. If it's outside of that, you guys need to dial the phone and call them. I'm sorry, but you guys need to. And trust me, I am somebody, I would much rather text somebody than call somebody. I loved it when text messaging actually came out. I'm like, yes, I love this. But the reality is there are some conversations that just need to be done, at least with a voice, if you can't do it face to face. Okay, done with that soapbox too. Okay. So what do? We want to fill our mind up with the Word of God. We want to read our Bible. We want to pray, reading encouraging books. By the way, if you have questions, please start passing them up. Reading books that challenge you in your relationship with God. Spend time with friends who encourage you and speak truth to you. Because the reality is you need to spend time doing those things, because I think it's so true that we need to spend time with the world. We need to spend time with people who are different than us. And so our boundaries shouldn't necessarily be set up that we end up staying inside our little fence and never come out. That's not necessarily what I want us to do. But we need to make sure that we spend some time and we have very strict boundaries so that when we go out here, we don't find ourselves in the middle of the ocean. We don't find ourselves in the middle of the world and have no idea like where our security lies and where we can go back to. You always need to make sure that you've got a place that you can come back to. So when you kind of get beaten up out here, you come back and you get rest and you can recover. Does that make sense? So we want to do that. We want to be constantly filling our minds so that these things are in line with God, with the Bible. Inside of our box should imitate Jesus. So we need to let the stuff outside of the box stay there. Do not let the world's empty words affect you. Enjoy the outside of the box. I'm not saying I want you guys to run from the outside of the box. I want you to enjoy them, interact with them. But do not let them rule you. For we should be ruled by the Holy Spirit. Hence the verse, do not be drunk, but be filled with the Holy Spirit. Because you guys know like the effects alcohol has on it. It rules you. It affects the way you think and the actions you take and the beliefs that you have. I mean, we can stick drugs right there along with it. Like drugs and alcohol rule us. We will sometimes do anything we can in order to have that next fix. Like it begins to rule us. And we instead want to be ruled by the Holy Spirit. So, remember, stop putting the things that belong inside the box, outside the box. Don't expect other people to do something about this stuff, because that is yours. And I want you to keep the stuff that belongs outside of the box, and stop putting it inside the box. Because you don't control your family and friends. You don't. They can make choices and they can do what they want to do. You can help them and you can encourage them, but ultimately, it's always their choice. We need to stop trying to be busy controlling the outside of the box in hopes that it will change the inside. And in the words of Clayton King, which I thought was great as I was listening to this, because if you know who you are inside the box. You are a child of God. You are forgiven and saved. You're going to know what to do. Because you're going to have that boundary. Your identity, being a child of God, gives you an identity, gives you boundaries, and therefore you know what to do with those things that are outside your box. So if you have some questions, I don't know if people would pass things up. Continue passing them. We talk about things and that kind of stuff. We can continue passing things, and we can get to a question-answer time. And feel free to ask about Jordan. I'm kidding. I think here at the beginning, let's do that. And there might be some interactions we can do. But I just want to make sure, because I don't always keep track of who's all raised their hands, and I want to make sure that... What question do you have any good questions over there now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go with, when, if ever, should I consider meditation? I felt in the past, but I stopped it. It went down.
Meditation, that's a question.
Meditation.
What?
Meditation.
Medication, not meditation. Okay. Because meditation is out there too, and a lot of people use meditation for anxiety and depression. I think medication is fine. And I think it's sometimes necessary. And the reality is we live in a fallen world. Our bodies do not work the way God intended them to work. And so our brains don't always work the way they're supposed to be working. And sometimes medication is really good to help, get our heads down here. Like it kind of takes the edge off and you realize, oh, okay, I can now get out of bed. Or I can now not feel so overwhelmed. And so I'm not necessarily running so hard. I can actually deal with some of this stuff. But the thing is we can't rely 100% on our medication. We still need to do the hard work. Because that's something that we like to not do. We like to take the path of least resistance, and sometimes medication can do that. And that's kind of the same idea. Medication is kind of on the outside of the box, and we kind of hope that medication is going to fix what's inside of our box, and that's not necessarily always the case. Now we still have the hard work of setting up boundaries, But sometimes without medication, it's hard to set those boundaries. So medication works. I would talk to your parents and your doctor about that possibility of getting back on there. Yeah?
Sweet. All right. So I heard once that if something makes you angry, you should wait 24 hours to act upon it. If it still makes you angry, it's worth it. Is that really a healthy and good way to deal with your feelings?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know how many times that I've responded to something and I'm like, oh, I should have thought about that first. And I don't know if I would say 24 hours, but I would definitely say you need space to think about it. And here's the trick though, because how many times do we get angry and we take space to think about it, and what do? We stew over it. And we think how bad that person is or how awful that thing is. And so I encourage you, when you take that space and you think about it, you're thinking about what you control, what's inside your box. How did I interact, and how did I interact with this? What are my responsibilities with this? What did I do wrong in this situation? So that you know what was your responsibility and what was their responsibility. When it comes to the fence, I always like to say, some people like to toss things over into our fence, or we toss things over into their fences and expect them to do something with it. And so sometimes when people toss things into our fence, and that's what's making us mad, we need to know what that is, and we need to toss it back over. But don't toss over your stuff. You need to make sure you only toss their stuff over, and you keep the stuff that's your responsibility. And so waiting a period of time and figuring that out. So don't stew, don't gossip, don't do that stuff, but thinking about, why did that make me mad? The other thought is, anger is not, using counseling terms, they call it a second emotion. It's not the first thing you feel. You never feel angry first. There's always something something else. And then you don't like that feeling. And so anger is so much easier and so much safer to feel. Even though you don't like feeling angry, but the reality is that feeling angry is sometimes better than feeling lonely. Feeling angry, my big example is you're walking around a corner and something jumps out and scares you, but you don't like being scared. And so that scared you. You don't like feeling scared. So what are you going to do? You're going to get angry at that for scaring you. And so sometimes when you get angry, I want you to kind of take a step back and think about, well, what other things am I feeling? Am I feeling hurt? Is that why I'm angry right now? Because that person hurt me? And then you can kind of start figuring out, what is yours? What is theirs? What do you need to toss back? What do you need to claim? And then have a conversation about it.
All right. What are some of your favorite verses when you're feeling anxious at first?
That is a good question. And I have some, but I don't have them written down. You do the ones in Philippians, do not be anxious. And I am with you always, all the promises that God has. I think my biggest thing I'll tell you what helped me is my realization that, going back to Noah, that Noah at one point in time, God at one point in time destroyed the earth, right? Saved Noah, destroyed the earth. And then he sent a rainbow. And then I realized that, okay, and then he promised that he would never do that again. He would never destroy his creation again. And so he sent the rainbow to promise us that. And so in my realization of okay, so really, the only thing that can destroy me is my maker. Nothing can destroy me besides my maker. And yet my maker promised that he would never destroy me. And that was a huge turning point in my life when I kind of made that realization that I can go out and face this world and anything this world can give me. And the reality is, it might feel like it's destroying me, but it's not, because the only thing that can destroy me is my maker. And that was big for my own personal realizing what was inside my box. So none of these things outside can destroy you. That's basically it.
I have a couple verses that
Yeah, go for it.
memorized a couple years back. I struggled with. Psalm 46:10.
up be still and know that I'm God.
Be still and know that I'm God.
Yeah. Then be strong and courageous. The Lord goes with you wherever you go.
Be strong and creative. How do I say that again? Say that again. Courageous. I can sometimes mess up my words. My husband laughs at me. I make them up too. It's great.
And that was Joshua 1.
Joshua 1:9.
Matthew 28:20.
Matthew 28:20.
1 Corinthians 15:10.
1 Corinthians 15:10.
And that's just a paraphrase.
Okay.
My grace is sufficient for you.
My grace is sufficient for you.
For my power is made perfect.
For my power is made perfect in weakness.
2 Corinthians 12.
What was that one?
2 Corinthians 12.
I put 2 Corinthians 12:9. How about one more?
One more. He restores my soul.
He restores my soul. Psalms 23:3. Great, thank you so much.
Okay, this is kind of two questions. If you don't have social media and most of your relationships are in person, how do you still try and connect? But then also, how do you be comfortable and connected with other people when you're the odd one out? And not everyone else? If you don't have social media, how do you be odd one out? And not everyone else?
Maybe it's not your problem.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
The microphone.
All right, here we go. If you don't have social media and most of your relationships are in person, how do you try and connect? And then how do you be comfortable and connected with other people when you are the odd one out or not like everyone else?
If you don't have social media, how do you connect with people? That would be definitely something I would say is that outside the box, inside the box, where maybe it's not your problem that you don't have social media, because the reality is, I'm guessing you don't have social media because somebody has said you can't have social media, and they're setting up a boundary for you because they feel like that is a necessary boundary for you. And trust me, they're saving you from a lot of stuff, drama and stuff that happens on social media. And I think the rest of us, and I would say 90%, because I think there's a larger community of people than you guys think of whose parents have said, and who are sick of social media, have said no to that. Or that they've set that boundary up. That we need to be a lot more accepting and honor those boundaries. And not walk around thinking you should totally be on social media, that's stupid that you're not. Or making them feel, like if you have friends who are not on social media, make sure that you text them things that you were, like information that they might want to know or might need in that moment of time. And so there are other ways to connect because the reality is you still have the one-on-one. You can still call people, you can still text people, you can still feel connected. And don't confuse the fact that social media is like real relationships, because it's not. It's social media relationship, and it takes on a different feel than what you get other places. If you really want to connect with somebody, the connection is going to happen one-on-one. It's not going to happen over the telephone. And so truly that you have to kind of redefine it. What does it mean to, if I want to connect with people, how do I connect? Because it's not going to be over social media. It's going to be the one-on-one stuff. So that's what I think about that.
All right, this is kind of going off of the first question that was asked a little bit. How do we know when we're strong enough to stop medication?
How do we know when we're strong enough to stop medication? That is the answer to with your therapist and your doctor. It's not up to you. That's my answer.
How do I deal with social anxiety?
Stop it. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm going to tell you, like, it's one of my favorite, like, no, I forget which TV shows did it. True Colors. You guys have never even heard of it because they stopped airing it a long time ago. But anyways, they did this little segment, and I still laugh about it, where these people come into this therapist, And he's like, okay, it's $5 for the first 5 minutes and $1 thereafter. Okay, that sounds pretty good. And so the person comes in, and he's like, okay, timer starts. And they tell him it's their problem. And so they talk about like social, like their anxiety and the fact they're afraid that they're going to be trapped in a box and they can't get out, and it creates all this like anxiety in them and da-da-da. And so then they stop their story, and then he looks at them and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to tell you 2 words, and then we'll be done. And they're like, okay, great. And he's watching the time to make sure it stays under 5 minutes. He goes, stop it. And they look like, what? But what if I get trapped in a box? You won't. Stop it. Don't go in the box. Anyways, but as a therapist, I just thought it was hilarious. I know that it's more complicated than that, so don't let me think that I'm like downsizing social anxiety, because it's real. It is absolutely real. And holy smokes, I experienced it when I walked in and I saw the big auditorium today. It's like, there was only supposed to be like 20 people here. I think social anxiety, I think that's where we get confused with the outside of our box and the inside of our box. Because we're going into a group of people and we're afraid of what they're thinking about us, we're afraid of what they're going to do, we're afraid of all these things that are going to happen. And we're focused more here, those things that we don't control, and not focused here. Because the reality is you are the same person outside of the room as you were inside of the room, right? That's not changing at all. But for some reason, when we come into a room, all of a sudden it changes. Because the people around us are now reflecting the way we're thinking about ourselves. And what we are, because all of a sudden your thoughts are now, those thoughts are popping in your head and you're now taking them to be true instead of throwing them out. Of like, no, like I'm gonna be fine. Like when I came into this room and I was like, holy smokes. I had to sit back and remember, the reality is these kids wanna be here. They're not going to kill me. They're not going to laugh at me. Like, they're here because I have information that they want to hear, and those are the thoughts I need to keep reminding myself. Not the other thoughts. They're probably false anyways. They're probably words, empty words I've heard in the past that are still popping up in my head, and I need to get rid of those and put back in the space of those words, thoughts that are true. And the reality is, even if you guys did kill me, I'm good with that because I'd be going to heaven. And so really, ultimately, that's where my mind goes, is that hope. That even if you did kill me, you wouldn't. Once again, no one can destroy me but my maker. And so we're all good with that.
Okay, here's a good one. How do I tell my friends about my depression and anxiety? I'm scared that they will treat me differently.
How do I tell my friends about my depression and anxiety? Well, one, I would say you're going to pick those friends wisely. And because I do, like, I'm being really cautious with this because sometimes I don't think that some friends necessarily need to know and that goes to one thing of, what is your motivation for telling them? Is your motivation for telling them is because you just want them to know because it's going to make you feel better to know that somebody else knows that you're struggling at that moment in time. Because sometimes it does help to know when you're in a group of people and someone knows that you're kind of struggling, that you can have eye contact with them and they give you a wink and you know that they got you and that's good. Or are you telling them because the reality is that you want them to like support you and make you feel better and do all those kind of things. And so I think it comes back to your motivation and being specific about who you tell. About it, because it's not necessary. You want to be careful that you're not putting your depression and anxiety in someone else's box. That's the careful thing that you have to be really careful about. That this is yours, you have to own it. That no one can change your depression and anxiety but yourself, really. Medication can help, going to a therapist can help guide you, but it ultimately is yours. No one affects it but you. Yes. Yes, go for it. We have like 5 more minutes. I want to make sure that. How do you deal with sudden episodes of depression and anxiety? You know, quite honestly, what I would say, if they're sudden and they don't last very long, not depression and anxiety. I'll be quite honest with you guys. Like depression, go back to the actual definition of depression. Depression is a period of time that there's a whole bunch of like the symptoms, and you gotta have like 5 of them. So it's not just like one of those symptoms. Like you gotta have like 5 of these symptoms. they have to last for at least 2 weeks, and they have to like affect your daily life. So if you're able to like, you feel sad and kind of frustrated and overwhelmed, but you're still able to get up and go to school and do all these kind of things, like technically you are not clinically depressed. Does that make sense? But life does get overwhelming, absolutely. So I'm going to answer your question. Do you have a follow-up?
I think I could freeze like anxiety during the middle of
Panic attacks, okay. But does that make sense though about the other thing? Yes. Okay, so panic attacks. Panic attacks last for 10 minutes. They really do. Your body kind of freaks out. They think that something is in danger. You are in danger because you are about to fight a wild boar. But guess what? There's no wild boar in your classroom, okay? But your body is reacting as though you are going to be fighting a wild boar. And so it freaks out. Adrenaline rushes into your body because it needs to get ready and fight this wild boar. Your body will process that and pull that back out within about 10-15 minutes. So, but the problem is, what do? We start to get anxious about feeling anxious. Because we start feeling anxious. And then we feel anxious that we're anxious, and then we feel more anxious. And then, so next thing you know, your body is just pouring all this adrenaline into your body over and over and over and over, and it never ends. So the best thing you can do when you're sitting in your classroom and those walls feel like they are closing in, and you are just freaking out, you need to take a deep breath, and you need to tell yourself, I'm good. You even look around the room and like in your head think, there is no wild boar. Like there is no wild boar. I am okay. Nobody's doing what I think that they're doing, and it's going to be okay. Because you want to make sure that gets out. I know for some people, like fidgeting, shaking their leg, those kind of things can kind of help things because it kind of gets that nervous energy out, and so it kind of makes them, it's kind of like a soothing, you know, like baby sucking their thumb. But I know you guys don't do that. Don't do that. But it's that same idea of figuring out ways to soothe yourself in those moments to kind of calm yourself back down, because in 10 minutes later, your heart rate's going to go back, and you're going to be fine. And and then afterwards you can kind of think about and figure out, like, what was that thought that triggered your anxiety attack? Does that make sense? We need to go back to your thought, because you let a thought pop into your head that triggered it. Something happened. You had a belief that triggered it, and you want to make sure you go back and kind of figure that out. And then process it. If you have a counselor, process that with, trust me, as a counselor, I would love it when I have people come in and say, I had a panic attack, this is the thought that triggered it, what do we do about it? So take it back to them, or process it with your parents or somebody safe. Yeah.
Okay, first of all, we're supposed to be done at like 20.
Oh, was it? I was thinking 10:30.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So I always see it on TV, it's advertising about like bipolar depression. That is like, I feel like I like self-diagnose myself.
Always?
Yeah.
Which is why I didn't come in here to enlist you guys exactly what it is. So I think you guys self-diagnosed yourself enough. Bipolar is a pretty serious thing to diagnose yourself with. It looks different in kids and adults, and so sometimes it can be hard to like figure out with kids. But basically, it's that idea that you can kind of feel this, and it kind of cycles up and down.
But it's like bipolar depression, not just bipolar. Like, doesn't mean your depression is supposed to be on and off.
Yes.
Seasonal depression?
There's a cycle to it. So basically, bipolar is the idea that there's a cycle to something. And so sometimes people are higher and lower than others. And so yes, you do have some we have bipolar, then we have all these like sub things that so we have an idea of what their cycle looks like. But bipolar is the idea that you cycle through it. Some people have a quick cycle and some people have a longer cycle. But it's the idea that you're depressed for a certain amount of time, and then you kind of feel better, but then you might get depressed again, and it just keeps like cycling through. And that's kind of what that goes. Yes.